I'm sure, I'm John Majors, by the way, and I'm sure that somewhere there's a, kind of public speaking 101 course that you can take, and they say you should always start off with complimenting the audience that you're talking to about something, and don't take this as being disingenuous or just kind of pandering. But I got to tell you, you all have some of the best weather I have ever seen. I literally walked out of the airport this morning, and I could smell the ocean as soon as I walked out of the airport. And Mike, just for a split second, I wondered to myself, how much trouble would I be in if I just went right to the beach? So I'm glad I didn't, though. I've learned a lot. Everybody, have you guys learned a lot today? Have you really enjoyed this conference? Good. I mean, like literally down to the fact that I'm getting ready to put a new roof on my house, and I walk in and we're talking about all these high efficiency things I can do to my roof, and I was like, that's why I didn't go to the beach, because I was supposed to come in here and learn about things I could do to my roof to make my house more energy efficient. I want to take a brief moment to just say thanks to Michael for extending the invitation. I really enjoyed a lot. Enjoyed myself today. I've learned a lot. I want to also thank Suzanne Rogers, Terry Burns, and their teams for putting on such a wonderful conference today. I missed the mayor this morning, but I do want to thank Mayor Bill Saffel for everything that he and his team do. I have the pleasure of working with former Mayor of Atlanta, Shirley Franklin, and she tells me all the time that transformative redevelopment does not happen without genuine committed leadership from the highest levels of city leadership on down. So again, thank you to all of those people and to all those folks for everything that they've done. Thank you especially to you guys. I mean, it's late in the afternoon. It's a beautiful day out. You guys are here. So I really, really appreciate that, and not only for what you guys are doing being here today, but what you're all doing on the front lines. And I know we've heard a lot about affordable housing, and I know that not everyone here is technically in affordable housing or technically an affordable housing developer, but I want you to know that everything that you do plays a big role, and so I just really want to say thank you all. Thank you all, not only for being here again, but for what you do every day. So I'm excited to share a little bit with you guys about purpose-built communities, who we are, what we do, etc. And to kick off our time today, what I'd like to do is I'd like to share with you a video. It's only about 6 minutes, so don't turn the lights off. I don't want anybody to fall asleep. But the video will give you a good background on who we are, what we do, etc. And then if it works for everybody, I'll come back up, and then I'll talk for a little while. I've got a couple PowerPoint slides I'd like to share with you, and then maybe at the end we can have some Q&A. So thanks also to Josh for being the DJ, the tech guy. Thanks so much, man.
There are millions of people throughout this country that, through no fault of their own, are not getting to realize their potential. They are not yet living an American dream that other millions have. And they need a helping hand because their circumstances did not give them what was given to me when I was young.
Welcome to Challenge Foundation Academy.
That's great.
The goal of purpose-built communities is to help hundreds of thousands of people in many communities reach their potential. There's nothing more worthwhile than watching somebody blossom into something they never dreamed that they could be.
The dream is that purpose-built communities will end up as a model for community revitalization and transformation, and that there are ways to break the cycle of poverty.
I lived in the St. Bernard housing project until Katrina hit. You got to deal with the shooting, and somebody's always running from the police, and every time you turn around, they find a body here or there. When I first came back and I saw how they was fixing it up, I was like, wow. It's beautiful. It looked like $1 million back here. Like you go from rags to riches. I'm poor, but nobody has to know that. because I'm living like a movie star.
The changes I've seen in the East Lake community are immense.
I don't even know if I would be at Georgia Tech without Drew Charter School, because I just feel like every step prior to me attending Georgia Tech was like a step that was kind of put into motion because of the education that I received at Drew.
I had some friends who went on to college. I've also seen some friends who they went the opposite road, you know? And I feel like if they could have been in an environment like Drew, I feel like their lives would have taken a different turn.
If you could take one of the worst neighborhoods in the country at that particular time and just recreate it into just something that is just completely mind-blowing, then I feel like you could take any community and you could replicate this. There's always someone who wants that opportunity but just needs to be given the chance to pursue it.
Mayors have been looking for these solutions for years. The dream is to take the East Lake model and to offer it to other communities across America. Those components include mixed income housing, education from early childhood all the way through college, support services, and a lead organization, a primary organization that focuses 100% of their time and energy on knitting together the other three pieces.
The crime tape marked the entrance to the scene of the shootout.
It was scary. It was scary. And you could see just open on the streets, drug dealing. And the center of all that was this East Lake Meadows, which was a public housing project.
80% of the children are not performing. Some 15 years ago, Tom Cousins and the East Lake Foundation started on this journey to see if there were some solutions to the problems that faced poor people who were really locked into poverty and locked into an unhealthy community.
You'd see blood on the ground where there'd been a shootout. It was terrible. And the families were absolutely petrified.
It was a community that was feeding on itself.
You know, it's just the luck of the draw. Suppose I had been born in East Lake Meadows. I mean, these kids that are born in those cities, they had nothing to do with why they're there. They're there. They got a bad deal.
This was just a model that had failed its mission because it was concentrating poverty.
If that place can be fixed, any place can be fixed. Did I know it would work when we started this thing? No, I did not. I just knew we had to try.
Is that the same thing as this?
That is a design issue already.
It looks like one thing right here and one thing.
You know what? There are wings missing
Where?
from the side.
East Lake can be replicated. We can continue the great record that East Lake has started.
Purpose-built communities work. It's working and the rollout works. There's really no limit to how far this can go.
This really has the firepower to keep going and be even better in years ahead.
We can do this. The formula has been laid.
It can work in every single community where there are people who care about their city, they care about their community, where they want to give back.
It's just something that needs and ought to be done. It's just too obvious.
If we don't do the work as a society, as a nation, we will regret it.
There's just a great satisfaction to see the lives changed and kids that had nothing become meaningful parts of society.
You know, there are all kinds of things in life that people don't know can be done until they see it done. And once they see it and they start believing in it, there's no power on earth that's like the power of a great idea.
I really enjoy that video, and I got to tell you, as many times as I've seen that video, I get choked up every time the kids start to sing. And every time I say, I'm not going to get choked up this time. And every time it happens. So I guess I should just stop fighting it. But I tell you, for me, my favorite part, the part that jumps out at me the most of that video, is when Tom Cousins says, you know, if I had been born in East Lake Meadows, my life might have been different. And I wasn't born in a neighborhood like East Lake Meadows either. But I think Tom's right that if I had been born in a neighborhood like East Lake Meadows, the trajectory of my life would have been different as well. There's actually statistics out now, and some of you may be familiar with this, that show that the primary indicator of the trajectory of someone's life can be traced back to the zip code in which that child was born and raised. Let me say that again, because we live in the United States of America, right? We live in a meritocracy. We live in a place where, you know, we all have the Horatio Alger story, if you work hard, you'll make it, etc. The primary indicator for the trajectory of a grown-up's life is where that child spent his or her early years. And when I hear that, I think about it not only from the angle that Tom Cousins talked about, but I think about it from another angle. I've had a lot of great opportunities in my life. So spent time as an undergrad at Morehouse College. I went to business school at Harvard, spent some time on Wall Street, etc. I'm very grateful for all of the experiences that I've had. And the one thing that I really find in common about all those experiences is that I've been extremely impressed by the people that I've met in each of those environments. And I really have had a chance to spend some time with people and talk to them, and I hear about their backgrounds, where they grew up, how they grew up, kind of places they went on vacation, schools that they went to. And, you know, I'll let you guys know, I'm from the 19th Ward in Rochester, New York. And so, my dad is retired from Eastman Kodak. The majority of his career he spent as a security guard. Little known fact that you guys don't ever need to know. Kodak made film back when cameras had film. You guys remember that? And so film has a lot of silver in it. That's actually what gets developed, et cetera. So you can imagine the creative ways that people try to take a little silver home with them at the end of their shift. And so, again, my dad was a security guard at Kodak most of his life. And my mom is a nurse, and she will very proudly tell you that she's been a nurse for 40 years, and she is retiring in a couple of weeks. So she's super excited about that. But that's my background. Blue collar, working class, very, very proud of that. But I got to tell you, when I would sit down and talk with some of my friends from Harvard and Morehouse and Wall Street and all these places, you know, I eventually learned to play it cool. But at first I wasn't really cool. But I was awestruck. I was like, wow, really? You know, they'd tell me about places they had been on vacation as a kid. They'd tell me about the companies that their dads run. They'd tell me about the schools that they went to, et cetera. And listen, I'm not taking anything away from any of those folks, any of those gentlemen, any of those women that I've met. They're all smart and hardworking people. And listen, I'm not even envious of them. My wife and I are expecting our first child in December, and I can guarantee you can bet that my wife and I are going to do everything we can to give that little boy or that little girl every possible advantage in life. But when I talk to my buddies from those elite circles, I can't help but think about the kids I knew, some kids in my family who did grow up in places like East Lake Meadows. You know, and these kids, they thought my family was rich because, number one, my parents were married and my dad lived with us. And number two, we didn't live in the projects. And so I have to ask myself, what if those kids were born into families where everyone went to college as far back as anyone can remember? I have friends who went to colleges where their last name was on the building. And I just, like, how does that work? Like, how much of a hard time is a professor going to give you when your family's name is on the building? You know, but I have to ask myself, what if those kids who were born in the hood, or who were born in the hood, what if they were born into families where they received mentoring from some of the nation's top executives, not only every night at the dinner table, but on the golf course, on the weekends, you know, with their dads and their dad's friends, and family vacations in the Hamptons and Martha's Vineyard and places like this. What if those kids from the hood had those types of opportunities? To me, it seems that just as impossible as it is for some kids to grow up and be successful, it seems like there's some kids for whom it's almost impossible for them to fail. And listen, I'm not saying that we should take kids from the hood and send them on vacation to Martha's Vineyard. That might be a good idea, but that's not what I'm proposing. But listen, somewhere between impossible to succeed and impossible to fail, I'm going to move this. Somewhere between impossible to succeed and impossible to fail, there is a balance. And that balance is where a person has a real fighting chance, not only to improve their own lives, but in many cases, maybe more importantly, to improve the lives of their children. And as we talk about breaking the cycle of poverty, that's what we're talking about. Because here's the reality, folks, all right? We cannot expect poor children to draw their own roadmap out of poverty. I'm going to say that again. We cannot expect poor children to draw their own roadmap out of poverty. And here's the thing. When those poor children grow up and they become adults who have only known poverty for generation after generation, nothing magic will have happened along the way that will teach them to draw a roadmap out of poverty at that point either. And so that's why we at Purpose Built do what we do. We help local business, civic, and community leaders like yourselves revitalize neighborhoods to break the cycle of poverty. I think if we can go to slide 2, and we'll go through a couple of these. I just want to share some quick stats with you guys about poverty. You'll see here 45 million Americans live in poverty, and I won't read all these stats so you can see, but look at some of these stats in the bottom right-hand corner. 3 times more likely to drop out of high school, 7 times more likely to be in worse health. This is based on the zip code you were born in, unfortunately. So this is what we're up against. Can we jump to the next one? Thanks, Josh. When you start talking about concentrated poverty, so this isn't just, hey, my family's poor. This is my family's poor and everybody around me is poor. It's just exponential. 86% of third graders reading below grade level. I don't know if they said it in the video. When Mr. Cousins first started at Eastlake, so there was a school, but it served only the poor kids in that neighborhood. 5% of fifth graders were reading on grade level. 5% were passing the state standards. That means that 95% of the kids in that neighborhood could not read on grade level in fifth grade. Look at this. 12 times higher homicide rate. Every family in Eastlake, when Mr. Cousins started there, had a 90% probability that they or someone in their family would be a victim of a felony, a violent felony. Think about how you walk outside your door if there's 9 out of 10 chance that this year somebody, either myself or someone in my family, is going to be a victim of a felony. And so this is the one that, for me, from my business background, this is the one that really jumps out at me. Because this is not a problem of those people. This affects everybody. I look at this bottom right-hand corner. 4% of our GDP as a nation is affected by concentrated poverty. $500 billion per year. So, I think those stats are pretty compelling. But honestly, that's the easy part, right? Nobody's ever gonna argue with you that trying to end the cycle of poverty is a bad thing. No one's gonna ever say it's a bad idea. But the question is, how do we do it? The first thing to remember, and here's kind of my disclaimer language, right? What we do at Purpose Built is a very narrow section of a very wide industry. Community development is very, very wide. There are lots of different ways to do it. There are lots of right answers depending on the neighborhood, the situation, the community, the circumstances. The right answer is going to be different in different situations. So when we talk about Purpose Built, again, this is just the way we do it. It's not in any way to say that we have all the answers. In many ways, it's a recognition that we only know a small amount, and so we kind of try to stick to what we know. All right, so our model is, I tend to think of it as 1-3-1, a defined neighborhood, 3 simultaneous areas of implementation: mixed income housing, cradle to college education pipeline, community wellness, and then a strong lead organization. And I know you saw a lot of this in the video, so I'll talk through this pretty quickly. Let's take a look at slide 19. So this, we talk about the mixed income housing, and this very last bullet down at the bottom is destigmatizes the neighborhood. That's not a word you hear every day, right? Most people don't go around talking about destigmatizing, but here's what destigmatizing means. If we were running a marketing or an advertising agency, and this was some of these neighborhoods were our clients, we would say that they have a brand image problem. And here's what a brand image problem is. Imagine, and I know for many of you, you don't have to imagine. I see a police officer in the back. You're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. The neighborhood here in Wilmington, that when people hear the name of that neighborhood, they only associate negative things for decades with the name of that neighborhood. That's a brand image problem. And until you start to do something like building mixed income housing, where all of a sudden people who have choice make a choice to live in this neighborhood, all of a sudden the narrative starts to change. That's what we talk about when we're saying destigmatizing the neighborhood. But that only begins the process of ending the cycle of poverty. Can we take a look at slide 20? This is when we start talking about the cradle to college education pipeline. This is really one of the bigger, I think, one of the bigger things that you know, I know everybody in here is related to housing in some ways. For me, this is something that I had to get religion about. I was a real estate guy. I didn't have any kids, so I would think about, you know, the amenities of a real estate property. How close was it to the work centers, job centers? How short of a drive could I promote that this would be for people who are going to work downtown, et cetera? How close was it to, you know, the entertainment venues? You know, I hate to say it, but I'd kind of think about, man, if a guy goes out, has a little too much to drink, how much of a cab ride is it for him to get home? But those are the types of things that the type of development that I was doing, you know, were really important. But then as I started working with Purpose Built and started reading more and learning about this, as well as preparing to be a parent myself, what I realized, the #1 driver of housing decisions for people with choice, people who are going to be spending not subsidy money or checks that they're getting from the government, people with choice who are, you know, spending market rate dollars, the #1 driver is going to be where you send your kids to school. And the key, again, nobody's going to argue with that, right? Everybody thinks it's a good idea. Every kid should have a great education. Here's the tough question. How do you do it? So you'll see some bullet points down here. 2 that I want to focus on: direct control of the school. What that means is that the principal has to be able to make decisions that are in the best interest of the students in that school. You know, I can give you examples of that, but also I want to focus on the emphasis on high-quality early childhood education. At Drew and at Eastlake, there's an early learning center where at 6 weeks old, they start pushing language into kids, and then they're pulling language out of kids. And this is so important because there's research by a group called Hart and Risley, 2 different researchers, that shows that by the time a kid from a low-income family gets to kindergarten, that kid has heard, listen to this now, 30 million fewer words than that kid's higher income peers. So there's a 30 million word gap. Now granted, John counts as 3 words, but still 30 million word gap by the time they get to kindergarten. And this really clicked for me last week. We had a group come to visit Eastlake, and they were from Oakland. They were educators. They were really specialists in this kind of 0 to 8-year-old development range. And they said, John, listen, a kid is going to express him or herself one way or another. If that kid has words, that kid will use his words. If the kid doesn't have words, they use their behavior. And all of a sudden it clicked. And a lot of things started to make sense. So that's why very early on in these neighborhoods where we're talking about breaking the cycle of poverty, early childhood education is probably, if you had to make one investment, I would honestly say that's the investment to make, and I say that in a room as a real estate guy in a room full of real estate folks. And then let's see. So we've got one more of the pieces. Can we go to slide 27 on this, Josh? And again, this is just brag sheets on how well the kids at Drew are doing now. Community wellness. Community wellness, kind of, again, this stuff is really no-brainers. This is the glue that makes a neighborhood work. This is all the stuff that if anyone in this room is looking for a particular neighborhood to live in, the things that you would disqualify a neighborhood for not having. Access, and I think we even talked about it earlier on one of the panels. You know, do I have easy access to a market quality grocery store? Everybody in here probably knows what a hood grocery store is. You go in and you're like, this is not the temperature that a grocery store should be. It's just the most depressing thing ever. I'm talking about a high quality market rate grocery store that folks in here would shop at. And the beauty of that is when you bring that sort of market quality amenity, you bring safe, accessible recreation, etc. Not only do people with choice, market rate residents move to that area, but when they move in and bring the rooftops and that sort of thing that the retailers, etc., investors are going to be looking for, they bring those amenities for everybody. So everybody benefits when you have a grocery store that everybody would like to shop at, when you have access to recreation. Things as simple as having sidewalks throughout a neighborhood and street lights so that people feel comfortable walking down the street. I think I don't know what my next slide is. Maybe there's a lead organization slide. Is there? Sorry, guys. Right. Lead organization, the key here is ensures that all programs are connected, coordinated, and seamless. So we talk about a local organization that the only reason that organization exists is to implement this holistic redevelopment. And I tend to think about that as, this should resonate here. You guys are all real estate developers. Imagine building a house, and you just expect that your architect, your contractors, your carpenters, your plumbers, your electricians are all going to show up on the same day, and they're all going to work together to build a house. How's that house going to turn out? It's not, right? So this is the importance of the lead organization. We call this our secret sauce. This is what really differentiates purpose-built communities from other organizations and other models, we think. Let's go to slide 31. I think that's where we are. Thanks, man. So you guys will see this on the right-hand side of the screen, this orange rectangle. That's what we call our target area. This is where all the capital investment is going to go. And generally, this is a former housing project that's going to be torn down and rebuilt with the mixed income housing. But the beauty of this, and if we go to the next slide, I think, is I always think about dropping a stone in a pond. You have that ripple effect. So you can just see just in the East Lake Kirkwood area, if you said that was a 1.5 mile radius, if you will, over $30 million in commercial investment. Right across from East Lake Meadows, former housing projects, which are now called the Villages of East Lake, there's a brand new Publix. I go there all the time. And that probably would not have happened without some of the purpose-built development components. So that's the importance of the defined neighborhood. And so again, that model is 131, right? So number one was a defined neighborhood. This is not a citywide or regional approach. It's a defined neighborhood. Then it's simultaneously, all together at the same time, mixed income housing, early childhood education, pipeline. And so when we say pipeline, we're saying cradle to college, right? So that's from, call it 6 weeks, all the way up until 12th grade. And just putting the early learning center and the pre-K and the kindergarten and the 12th, K through 8 in the same location doesn't work. The pre-K teachers need to be in conversation with the 0 to 3 year old early learning. And then the kindergarten through 8th, they need to be in conversation with the pre-K. And so it's all coordinated and seamless. That's the pipeline. And so then community wellness, again, no-brainer of what that is. And then the last piece is that lead organization to oversee it and manage all of it. So we talked about why this work's so important, what it is, how it all works together. So let's focus now on, on what it takes to make it work. For our model, again, the purpose-built model, it's a very wide range. We do a very narrow subset of community development within that. Can you go to slide 35 for me, Josh? Okay, so there are a couple things here that I want to focus on. This top bullet, strong leadership that fully supports purpose-built communities, holistic development vision and approach. We don't sell. We work where we're invited. This is something that my boss has basically had to kind of like re-educate me on. I've always been in environments where we're out selling. I'm trying to convince you that you need what I've got in my briefcase. Purpose-built doesn't do that. In fact, purpose-built only works where there is some contingent of local leadership that is just losing sleep at night saying, man, I've got to figure a way to fix these problems in this area. So that's one of the biggest requirements, is having that strong local leadership, and that'll tend to be the guys who will go out and recruit their friends and twist their arms or whatever they have to do, and those will become the board members of the lead organization, and they'll drive this thing. They'll make sure that the plumbers and the electricians and the craftsmen all work together. And then this sufficient scale for neighborhood transformation. This is going to be one of the challenges, just frankly, I think, and Mike and I talked about this. Wilmington doesn't have big housing projects. You probably don't have big housing project problems in the same way that some communities do. But generally, we're looking at 200 to 300 units being able to come in and either tear down a failed public housing community and rebuild it. And when we talk about that, we talk about generally a mixed income of a third public housing, a third low-income housing tax credit, and then a third that market rate that we've talked about. And then you need an economically viable surrounding area, which is essential to attract the market rate residents. So this is just general real estate market supply and demand, right? So this is not a citywide approach. It's not a region-wide approach. We're looking at one neighborhood, and if we're looking at that one neighborhood and you can draw a 135-mile radius around it, if there's no economic vitality anywhere within that area, well, this one neighborhood's not really going to be able to generate much either. So that's really it. I want to wrap up. I want to share a story with you all. And it's Friday afternoon, right? So we can have a little bit of fun. I'm going to tell you all a story that you're going to say, why is he telling us this story? This has nothing to do with anything, but I'm going to try to bring it around. I have a buddy named Joe. Let's call him Joe. That's not his real name. From business school. And Joe is a big partier, all right? This is a guy, and everybody knows somebody like this, who at the end of the night when folks are like tapping out, like, man, I'm done, I got to go home, he is still raging. He's still going. He's the guy who's shutting the bar down every night. And I have personally written my name and phone number on a napkin and put it in his pocket and said, listen, at the end of the night, just show this to the cab driver because you're going to be in no shape to try to explain to him where you need to go. Well, true to form, my buddy Joe is on spring break years ago in business school, and he's in Jamaica and does what Joe does. He rages hard. He goes, everybody's tapped out. Everybody says, man, I'm going home. I can't do anymore. He keeps going. Well, my buddy Joe ends up the next morning at a bus stop, and he's trying to figure out how to get back to the hotel. He's had such a good time, though, that he passes out at the bus stop. So you can imagine what happens next, right? Guy comes along, steals his phone. Guy comes along, steals his watch. Next guy comes along and steals his money. And right about that time, old man working across the street runs across the street, shakes him, wakes him up, says, wake up, man. I can't stand to watch you get robbed anymore. And here's where I think it connects. Your kids, our kids, are a lot like Joe. They're not drunk, hopefully. They're not passed out on a bench, but they are being robbed. Unfortunately, oftentimes they're being robbed of their potential. The circumstances in which they've been born are robbing them of their opportunities. And in far too many cases, they're being robbed of their futures. And I just want to say that I am very, very thankful that this group of people in here exists every day on the front line, even if you don't realize you're doing it. You guys are just like that old man across the street who are standing up and saying, listen, I can't stand, I will not stand to watch these kids get robbed anymore.